everyone, and welcome to the Belgian Football Podcast. My name's Scott Coyne, and I'll be your host for this episode. And joining me to review the week in Belgian football, it's the one and only Mr. Joris Beck.
Oh, I thought you would say Ben, but okay, that would have been weird. So yeah, no. Unfortunately, it's again just the two of us. But happy to do so, and glad to be here. Yes, again.
That's right. No matter how many of us are with you each week, the machine keeps on rolling. Belgian football stops for nobody, including us. So we just take whatever comes. So you're stuck with me and Joris, which some would say is quite good company. Others may disagree. I suppose we should jump into this head first, as we always do, Joris, get into the guts of this. Because there's a lot to get through, as there always is here. Matchday 23 in the Pro League. St Truden 1, Antwerp 1, Westerlo 1, Genk 2, Charleroi 1, Cercle Brugge 1, Club Brugge 1, Kortrijk 1, Standard Liège 1, Dender 0, Beerschot 0, Union Saint-Gilloise 4, Anderlecht 4, Mechelen 1, and Leuven 0, Ghent 0. So let's start at the top of the weekend, as we usually do. At the Dewe Wasabi Steyen Stadium for St Truden 1, Antwerp 1. And I suppose in some ways it was almost inevitable that a certain Lamkelzee was going to score against his former side and cause a bit of drama along the way. Although I did like his celebration in front of the Antwerp fans. I was waiting for something suitably theatrical and very Lamkelzee-esque, and sure enough, we got that. I did think, though, that St Truden probably deserved a little bit more out of the game than they actually got in the end, Joris. I don't know about you. Antwerp starting well, but essentially sort of petering out of the game. Although they've only got one defeat in their last 7 now, Antwerp, so they're on a decent run of form. St Truden, on the other hand, will be probably a bit frustrated that they didn't get all the points this weekend.
Yeah, and I believe Antwerp also only have 2 wins in that streak at the same time, so it is mainly a lot of draws for sure. So not completely unexpected maybe here as well. Also the 6th draw away from home, specifically for Antwerp. Already the 5th draw at home for Sint-Truiden at the same time as well. So in that sense, maybe not the most unlikely result here. It was indeed had to be something with Lamkelzee, that it would be a penalty miss and still scoring and then celebrating like that. That was not written in the stars. Like the overhead kick one, that would have been the more brilliant way to do it. And it was okay. Give it to him. It was a good attempt. It was like not a show overhead kick or anything. It was probably really the best thing he could do there, and they did well, but just not well enough. But yeah, that adds both another tally to Lammers save some penalties. To that narrative that we've been talking about the last 3 weeks now, but also still okay. Of course, he scored in the end, so on the rebound. So that one didn't really matter, unfortunately, for Lammers this time. What else is there to mention? Belaid, I felt like he was a bit of a lucky boy when a challenge on Kerk got away with a. Did he even get a yellow card? I believe he did. But anyway, it could have been another color as well. Probably should have been. That's from STVV's side as well. And you could really also see at Antwerp, especially looking at the sheets, squad sheets. Yeah, they really do need some more depth now. Anyway, there was a lot of youth on the bench, which is, I support that, but you can't only rely on that. Of course, now also with Ondrejka officially leaving as well. I don't know if Kerk in the end caught a little injury as well with that challenge. Probably nothing super bad, I'm assuming, but I actually don't know, so I'll refrain from further comments at the moment on that. But anyway, that even would stretch it even more, that squad. There are the rumors. Nothing really materialized on that, but it's been a week now since the rumors started, I guess, of La Poussin maybe joining them. That could be an interesting addition to that squad for sure. But they really need some recruitment in these last few days. They have gotten a few in as well by now, but yeah, like I said, okay, obviously they have a few injuries as well, so at some point players will come back into the fold, but nonetheless, need some more reinforcements. Sint-Truiden, like you said, probably should have won this game, but it's a bit the story of their season. They are not they're not so easy to beat, but they're they don't win easily enough either. So that's why they are still struggling, relatively close to the bottom as well. Well, not only relatively, they're very firm in that. In those last four spots so far. Not completely out of sight of getting out there, but they would need a few wins soon now.
Yeah, it doesn't take us very long, does it? Most weeks to use one of our favourite words, the E word. Everybody has reared its head in the very first fixture, the efficiency word. You're talking about Antwerp needing a little bit more depth. Yeah, the Lapizan links are interesting. I think that would be quite a good pickup for them. I can see how he would fit in there, and also what he can contribute. So it'll be interesting to see if that does get over the line in the end. And of course, today news broke as well that it looks like Yannick Tolan's coming in to replace Jean Boutte, obviously as understudy to Lamens as well.
Yeah, and on La Poussin, of course, Antwerp nightlife is not so bad. So I guess that might be an argument for him as well.
That's true. It is a very interesting city. It's got plenty to offer, no matter what you're into, dare I say it. On Sint-Truiden, another note there, Mazu afterwards wasn't too. I mean, I was talking about a general feeling of frustration. I think he was a bit more philosophical about it. I think he felt that they're showing enough of the right things at the moment to give him that encouragement and positivity that they can dig themselves out of the situation. He was talking about the mentality of the squad as well, saying he thinks the mentality's fine. And I think he's also enjoying, this is my reading of it anyway, I think he's enjoying the challenge of having to manage Lamkelzee at the moment. There was a lot asked of Felix Mazu at Lamkelzee's unveiling press conference around, are you sure you really want to take on a character who has a history of being notoriously difficult to manage? And he said, I wouldn't know anything about that, playing it down. I think because Mazu is quite well known as being quite a good man manager for the most part. He does have a reputation for that. I think he's quite confident that he can maybe get the best out of a player who, as we all know, does have plenty of talent there. In terms of the fixtures coming up for these sides, the Canaries have got Union Saint-Gilloise and Dender away next. Antwerp have a busy and tough schedule ahead. They've got Club Brugge at home, and then they've got a double header against Anderlecht. Anderlecht at home in the Cup, of course. Second leg of the Cup semi-final, and then Anderlecht away in the league. So they'll be getting sick of the sight of one another, playing each other within a few days of one another there. But yeah, quite a good game, this one. I enjoyed watching this one this weekend. It had plenty to offer. And would have had a lot more goals in it, I think, if that E word again, the efficiency had been underlined. Speaking of efficiency, we might as well use that as a segue, because it is between most matches, positively or negatively, depending on which way you look at it and who your team is. Your team, the Genkies, managed to get a 2-1 win against Westerlo this weekend. They kind of did it the hard way. Thought they were quite good in the first half, dropped off it in the second. Timmy Simons was talking about, he was frustrated that his side had showed Genk too much respect, I think, as he put it, in the first half, allowing them to kind of control the game in a way that he felt they didn't need to as the home side. But here's the thing with Westerlo, I suppose, the reality again, only one win in their last 9, 6 defeats in there. We know they're in the relegation zone now. We spoke last week about, playing well often in big chunks of games. And again, you could argue maybe for 50% of this game, they played at a level that, they would want to, but didn't get anything out of it again.
Yeah, they didn't play well. Like, it seems like they can't play well for 90 minutes, and that's the main issue for them as well. Many games without a win, as you said. And yeah, I suppose do or die for TV Simons in the next game, Kortrijk away. They could really get into a very nasty situation if that one goes wrong. And well, okay, we'll get to that. But with Kortrijk's performance of last weekend as well, yeah, that it's either way. Kortrijk away is not an easy game, but I would not be too confident going into that. The being Westerlo at the moment, that Westerlo side at the moment, yeah, all its shortcomings as well. Yeah, so I feel like they didn't play well. They did indeed manage to get in, but mainly stay in the game maybe because of Genk lacking a bit of composure at times as well. And yeah, Genk they didn't create that much. I mean, I believe actually also the expected goal stats are like a lot in favor of Westerlo even, but yeah, here the eye test came into was a bit different, had a different outcome. Like especially in the first half, Genk I think they actually scored with their only two shots on target, but they were in complete control of the whole game. Even though they maybe okay after a slow start, once again probably need to highlight that still as well. Genk seemed to still struggle to get out of the blocks. Westerlo created, especially Rommels created a few chances and probably should have at least hit the target on a few more occasions than he actually did to force at least a save. Yeah, but on Westerlo, I also found it funny. It's stupid but funny. The number 77 came in for number 7 with one of the sponsors already being 777. So there were a lot of sevens when that happened. That's when Sayat Manesh came in for Alcocer. That was it was not in minute 77 or like also not 7. Well, yeah, it was not in minute 77 or 78. If it would show, that would have been even better for the visuals. But yeah, still, I found that a funny moment. Yeah, for Genk, well, I mean, I'm struggled to become very happy with it, but I'm happy with it because they win. They played for most part quite well, and there are some learning still. Like in this specific case, I mean, I'm not completely blaming anyone, but Careza's wrong pass already in the late stages leading towards the 2-1 instead of well, at least a chance on a 3-0 or maybe to control the ball a bit late on in the game instead of being caught out of position with players running forward as well. Of course, I mean, that happens. That happens specifically with young players. And I mean, there was still a lot of things to go that could have prevented a goal. That also didn't happen. But at that time, you already felt a bit like Genk were taking it a bit too lax. A little bit as well, but I'll try to stay focused on the positive. 6 out of the possible 6 out of the 2 away games they just had, making their away stats looking a little bit brighter. Fink actually also highlighted that, and also in the bigger picture, even though it's just a very small fragment of the bigger picture, like getting these 2 away wins while Club Brugge had home games against the 2 bottom sides, actually gaining points instead of actually what I would not have been surprised by, losing the first spot for at least for a while since the lineup of those games. Gaining some extra points on Club Brugge out of those 2 fixtures, 2 away games for you, and easy between brackets home games for Club Brugge. That gives the Genk fan like a good feeling for sure. Of course. I mean, we'll talk about that the other game before later on as well. There are some circumstances as well, of course, for Club Brugge to not really make it a big deal, but for Genk it's a good thing. And well, it looks like El Wadi found Munoz boots that he left somewhere last year, I guess. Scoring boots, scoring now third goal in January, 2 in the league, and also already 1 in the cup. All 3 away from home as well. Whether that's just because Genk had a few more away games than home games this month or not, that depends. And I mean, Genk were efficient until the 0-2. Afterwards, they failed a bit to kill the game. Tolo had a really big chance. There was also one counter where I believe anyway was clearly fouled. It looks like it was just outside of the box, but anyway, was taken away from a big the opportunity goal scoring opportunity was taken away. But in the end, happy with the win. Not everything is shining, but the points are coming, and the general level of play is all right.
Yeah, it's funny the way things work out sometimes, isn't it? Because it certainly wasn't the best performance from Genk by any stretch of imagination. Because of the way things worked out elsewhere this weekend, they have, as you were saying, marginally extended the lead at the top. So, every cloud has a silver lining, as it usually does. I'm glad you mentioned Westerlo's next fixture, which obviously is away to Kortrijk, which is obviously massive because of the situation both clubs are in, but particularly for Timmy Simons, as you were alluding to as well. I think he's very well aware, even from some of his post-match comments here, that game is significant for a number of reasons, and could very well have a bearing on whether he's still on the job this time next week, of course. Losing that, I think, would put him in a pretty untenable position in lots of respects. But of course, that's going to be a finely contested match, I suspect. Interestingly, Kortrijk have been one of the more active clubs so far in the window, haven't they? I mean, they've been trying to do kind of quite a lot of business. Bringing in players in positions that arguably they don't necessarily need, and of course bringing in players in positions that they do need. But they are trying to make things kind of happen. So they are really giving it a go now, as best they can, and we will watch and see whether any of the newcomers, and I suspect there might be another one or two more before the window shuts yet. It's beginning to look that way, whether any of them can have any kind of material impact on things. But before that happens, of course, they've got that massive game against Westerlo coming up this weekend. Moving on to another game that had its fair share of controversy, I suppose, centred around one particular incident. We had a case of articulatio cubitae. For those of you who know your Latin, that's the Latin name or the medical name for the elbow joint. The Dan Heyman elbow joint, causing a bit of a stir this weekend, and lots of discussion about this, I think, and whether we think that was deliberate or accidental, which you can give me your thoughts on in a moment, Joris, because we asked people on our social media what their thoughts were, and nobody was prepared to step forward and defend Dan. We'll just put that out there right now. So there did seem to be a consensus with those who were reaching out to us. I thought it was deliberate. I'll just put that out there since I've asked the question. It's fair enough that I answer my own question to a certain extent. I thought it was deliberate. I don't believe for a second, to be fair to Dan, that he's tried to hurt Christian Ravic there. I think it's one of those ones where he has knowingly moved it back, and it is an aggressive movement. When you watch it, you see the direction it goes in. But unfortunately, Christian Ravic came out of that really badly, and we know now that he does have a fracture of his orbital socket, the orbital eye socket, and his nose. So we will wait and see whether that might incapacitate him for a couple of weeks, or whether a mask is going to do the job there. But that's a very sore one, and Ravic was not a happy boy coming off the pitch with the Cercle medical staff, understandably. Cercle, I thought, with the better side, Joris, even though the draw probably was a fair result. We know that Cercle have had a good start under Ferdinand Feldhofer, 12 out of 18 now. And they're starting to kind of get into that area in the table that really they want to be in.
Yes, indeed. They look okay now. Not completely safe, obviously, but 5 points already now. Only 7 games to go, so things are looking clearer for them and brighter. For sky looks for them. On Charleroi, on the other hand, they are the last few weeks being in an awkward position. They could have made the jump to actually go into playoff Champions playoffs. But since they arguably could have done that, because the last 3 games they actually took the lead, but they haven't won any of those games in the end. So yeah, imagine how it could have been in a different world for them. Also, a bit of story of their season once again, of course. But yeah, now the chances of on this on the Champions playoffs seem to be squandered, or it's not completely over yet, but it's not very likely that that would still happen now. Also, the pitch not making it easy. Pitch throughout the game became more and more of a swamp, with the ball barely moving in some areas of the pitch as well. More like a water sports than a football game that you were watching at some points. But yeah, on Cirkelen once again 1-1. Again, quite a typical scoreline still for Veldhoven. Somers, I was surprised he was only second of the season in the league. I believe that is because I believe in he had a good start with a few, or at least one goal in the beginning of the European campaign, and maybe a few more goals there even. But yeah, just mainly another additional point away from home. I guess they will take that, despite they maybe deserved even more. And I do very much understand their frustration about Heymans not getting punished with a red card for that challenge. I'm also not going to be the one defending him, because it's just a red card. Maybe it might be unintentional. I mean, I'll leave these things in the middle, but it's just always a red card with this kind of situations lately. There are no excuses there. Of course, we can't know if that would also mean that Charleroi actually would be with 9 men for 20 minutes, because obviously events are not in a vacuum. But if that would have been the case, of course, that would have increased Cercle's chances a lot. Even though also, I think Somers also admitted that in the post-match interview. Against 10 men, they actually didn't create much anymore, and it was arguably maybe even Charleroi that still created the most. No, not that either side created a big chance or anything anymore, but like had a bigger, were a bit more dominant during this time period. Ultimately a draw. I guess it's not bringing both teams a lot of happiness, but I guess they're both not completely unhappy with it either. Yeah.
Yeah, so moving on from one Bruges side to another, Club Brugge, they drew one each with Kortrijk this weekend, and I think what this game tells us is that you should never really underestimate playing a Red Lantern side. The danger is when you play them, they score first, and what happens is exactly what we saw this weekend, and that is the Red Lantern side, in this case Kortrijk, obviously, drop very deep into a low block, which they're perfectly entitled to do. Not going to criticise them for that. I'm completely with our Ben, who says, I'm okay with a team playing any tactics they want to get the result they feel they can get. So the onus is on Club, obviously, to break them down. Kortrijk score first. And Club, despite ultimately being the better side, couldn't get it over the line in the end. And in fact, Kortrijk conceivably could have nicked it quite late on as well. Sitting in a low block and trying to kind of effectively hit Club on the break. I think tactically you could kind of see coming into this game, I think, how Kortrijk were probably going to approach this all day long. But it leaves Kortrijk in a situation where Yves van der Eyga still winless since he come back. Although he did say post-match that he was satisfied this weekend, taking a point at the Jan Breidel against Club. He sees that as a strong point gained, I suppose. And it'd be difficult to disagree with that, really, considering the circumstances. Club are now unbeaten in 20 across all competitions. Obviously, they had you would describe it as not a bad result in Europe as well. A few days ago, they picked up another point in a pretty uninspiring game, a game that neither side looked like they wanted to win. I think we can say that. But yeah, Club ultimately failing to move the ball quick enough and find enough space to get that second goal to win the game.
Yeah, and arguably, I think Kortrijk indeed, maybe for the effort they put in, kind of deserved this draw, even with the mitigating circumstances for Club, of course, being you hinted at it's European football and some rotation going on there. Additionally, one of the players that usually doesn't really get into these rotations much, even when the squad is rotated, which is Van Aken, of course, was sick during the weekend, so he couldn't even come off the bench if needed to make an impact. If he would even have been on the bench, because like I said, I think usually he's actually one of the players that even stays on the pitch, even if a lot of players around him rotate, since he's not very injury prone. Well, luckily he isn't injured either, but just yeah. I guess it is the season for some sicknesses once in a while. So he got something, and they didn't take any risks and prioritizing Europe for that as well, of course. So which is understandable. Decent result against Juventus indeed, but yeah, now it looked at the evening that it happened that it might definitely be enough. Well, not 100, but like almost 100% sure that they would qualify for this playoff round in between. And yeah, the results the day after were a little bit less in favor. So now everything is still hanging on that away game against Manchester City this week. So yeah, not an easy task. For like also coming into it with 20 games undefeated is of course a good sign, and we all know Manchester City hasn't been itself, I guess, or itself for the past seasons lately. But on the other hand, also they seem to be recovering a little bit despite their own. Well, okay, I'm not gonna. This is not a European football or a Manchester City or a British football podcast, but yeah. Anyway, like hinting at it a little bit. Yeah, last week they did give away a good position as well again, so they're not completely out of their crisis yet, but they really need to win, and that's the probably mainly still worrying side for Club Brugge. Who with a draw would be safe. And I mean, I think basically I do believe they will have to get some other results their way. They're still in a favorable position. Teams need to get past them, and only one or two things need to go wrong for one of the other sides. Yeah, everything is actually safe, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. But so okay, the mitigating factor, there was a lot of rotation for them. That was a lot of words to get that point, of course. And I feel like not only because of the rotations, but in general, maybe they took this game against Kortrijk a bit too lightly as well. Even the players that were on the pitch, yeah, not being that great. Also, like I texted you guys, even that was even more like if anything would go. I still fully expected things to change, but like the first 20 minutes, Kortrijk actually were playing really well, defending well, get some nice breakouts as well, and actually creating the biggest chances, even though not always it was followed up with a shot, so not always visible in the data either. But still, yeah, they really had yeah, a few good counterattacks. Derman really looks the part. We all knew that already, and I think everyone was a bit surprised. Well, one, that Kortrijk got his profile, because it's not not the profile they really needed, at least for based on us, but that he would go to Kortrijk and not to a bigger squad already. Yeah, I also mentioned again to you guys, like I would not, if he would not have played with Lommel already, so he wouldn't have played with two sides already this season. I would not have been completely surprised that he would already be bought by another bigger side this winter already, which is still possible, of course, with view on the transfer next summer. But yeah, unlikely to happen. But yeah, that it looks like a good pickup. He did well, also in a bit more offensive role than I had pictured him as well. So like maybe after all, he's one of the players that could still make the difference for Kortrijk, who are, despite taking this point, of course, still in an awkward position and really, really need to win that game against Westerlo. If they do that, yeah, things change for the good for them. Yeah, of course. I believe Van der Hagen, yeah, but yeah, sorry, yeah, Van der Hagen, of course, needs to win still. But I wanted to say De Jager actually scored his first goal in Belgium since when was it, 9 years or so. Anyway, since his return to Belgium after well, a few years in France and in MLS as well, stateside. But yeah, crucial game coming up for them. And yeah, and also, well, still no win for Kortrijk against Club Brugge inside the Jan Breidel Stadium. I believe it's the 36th attempt, and still no wins. There's a few sides where Club Brugge have this kind of amazing track record at home, and Kortrijk is one of them. But yeah, on the other hand, they've taken 4 points. Well, no, they've taken 4 points against Club Brugge and taken 5 points off Club Brugge, which is also quite surprising.
Yeah, just circling back to the Manchester City game and Club Brugge for a second. The interesting thing about this game coming into that one, I think, is obviously Manchester City need to win it to ensure that they make a playoff spot, which, presents positives and negatives, I think, from a club perspective, but arguably tactically, possibly more positive ones. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach them, because when you look at Club Brugge's European games so far this season, they've been quite pragmatic, successfully so, I have to say, but quite pragmatic, and we absolutely know the situation kind of coming into this game, from their perspective as well. So it'll be very interesting to see tactically how Nicky Hyen sets up Club Brugge for that game, I think, because as you say, there are still some unknowns in the mix there. And on the Jan Breidel, it's not the easiest place to go, obviously, particularly if you're playing club. So I think that probably explains why Yves van der Heijden was kind of pretty satisfied getting back on the team coach and heading back to Kortrijk with a point in the end. Moving on to another part of Belgium, we are moving southeast. We're going down into Wallonia to Sclesien. Happy days at Sclesien at the moment. 9 out of 9 for Standard. 3 wins on the bounce. Unheard of almost, as they win 1-0 at home against Vincent Everard's Dender. A draw probably would have been a fair result in the end when you look at the balance of play, but ultimately Standard's defence, which we have applauded on more than one occasion as being the kind of bedrock of most of the positive stuff that's coming out of Standard Liège, which there hasn't been a great deal of positivity on the whole, making the difference here. I thought offensively they didn't show too much. The penalty was pretty soft. I don't know, get your thoughts on that in a second, Joris, but Standard absolutely delighted, celebrating at full time, a bit like they'd won a cup final. I suppose that's what it means to kind of, get your nose into the top 6 at the moment.
Yeah, that was interesting to see. Not blaming anyone, because I can imagine it's a dire time for both, well, for the players and the squads and the fans as well. And like there seems to be at least some on the pitch lights at the end of the tunnel. But I found it mainly a little curious. But I mean, you can't measure that in the moment. But since it at that time was still a temporary position, like they could have been 7th again, and I mean that's still amazing. And I believe in a way you could also see it like they're. I think now we can say they're safe for relegation as well. So I mean, it's the very very much not the feeling that was there, but more the joy of indeed getting into the top 6 in the Champions playoffs virtually, where they would stay for at least for this week, for sure. You'll see. We all know they have a very, very tough schedule coming up. Still, they basically play a Champions playoffs still before these playoffs actually start. So they will really have to deserve their spot in there. Yeah, we'll see if they can maintain that 6th position in the top 6. I also found it an easily given penalty, I guess, but at least I'd say it's a penalty that was sought after. Like Kamara clearly knew where he needed to put his feet, so that like a collision was inevitable. And that's also I don't remember the name of who it was, the Dender defender anyway, couldn't reach the ball without touching him. Yeah, well played, I guess we should say, but it's a bit soft, like you said, also to me. But yeah, Zakiri now has 8 goals as well. 4 of them are penalties. So yeah, Standard, they don't score much, and they do score a lot of penalties as well. I guess you can look at it both ways. Maybe it's not a surprise that if they score it's that way, then. But yeah, still that are actually good stats. Of course, 8 goals. That's still almost half of their goal production. I believe it's 17 they've got now. And yeah, that's but unfortunately, yeah, they're still a very tough watch. Again, same as with my first initial comment here, nothing to blame for it given the situation they're in. But yeah, they arguably indeed did not deserve to win this game. Yeah, they also scored 4 goals now in January, which led to this maximum amount of 3 wins, consecutive wins. So that's talking about efficiency. That yeah, at both ends they are, but at the back end, I also still feel like sometimes or relatively often it's still a bit like they are defending well, but they are not lacking any well fortune either. Sometimes certain situations where like yeah, that was a very 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 big chance for Berta, I believe it was in the second half. That should really have been on target from really close range, for example. But yeah, that's a segue again to Dender as well. I guess they are a bit in the opposite standard this January, not playing that badly. And okay, I'm also not saying Sandar is playing really bad. They're just not the most fun to watch. It's not the same as being as playing bad, but yeah, they are efficient. Then this last 3 games have not been efficient and are a bit in a downward spiral like that. Yeah, not taking their chances and yeah, and dropping down the classification a little bit. Would start to worry even like maybe they could be sucked into to the relegation battle that we expected for them before the season. On the other hand, some other sides are also still there. They do need to pick up some points, that's for sure. But there might be some time to climb out of it. Still, they had bought themselves that time in December. In January, I guess they squandered that a little bit, but maybe they will pick up an average amount of points, although they still have a relatively difficult schedule as well, I believe. Yeah, definitely want to keep an eye out on still. Then that since they have also, that's also worth mentioning, I guess they had before they actually have been overperforming in the data in their expected goals. They have been efficient. Now it is lacking a bit, but that's yeah, seems to be evening out across the season. They could be further down if you purely look at the stats at those stats, which we are not, of course, but yeah, is a potential indicator that they might be indeed on the way to some worse positions still.
Yeah, we were talking last week, or I think I was highlighting the fact that Dender generally play better away from home. You know, they're freed up from the pressure of everything that comes with being the home side, having to take the initiative. I think they look more relaxed and play more expansive football when they are the away side. And again, we saw plenty of that this weekend. You know, there was a lot of quite good football from them. They just kind of couldn't, as Vincent Everard said afterwards, he said, we actually played pretty well, but just couldn't take any of those opportunities because they did get into plenty of good positions. In terms of their upcoming fixtures, they've got Charleroi away and St Truden at home next. So if they could get some decent points out of those fixtures, then that's going to go a long way to answering the question as to whether they're going to get sucked in yet. Because they are kind of, pretty key fixtures and fixtures that are potentially winnable for them. There are points there, and they are the sorts of fixtures where they're going to need to get some points if they're going to stay round about where they are. I think whenever we mention efficiency, and we do it about 10,000 times every week, we'll try an episode one week, folks, where where all three of us are banned from using that word. I think we should try that just for fun, just to see what happens. But yeah, I was thinking we should probably ring a bell every time we use that word.
No, we probably should use it like a swear jar, and I think then our production costs are covered easily just by ourselves.
Yeah, so to add some money to that swear jar, I'm just going to use the word again. In the next fixture, Beershot losing 4-0 at home to a very efficient Union Saint-Gilloise, who were very professional and in some respects didn't fall into the Red Lantern trap that Club Brugge did. This weekend, knowing they were going into a game where they were going to get into a real physical battle against the Beershot side, desperate for points. Beershot seemed to have kind of reverted to type a little bit, Joris. A non-match is how I would describe their performance this weekend. Really, really poor. After a few performances, actually, where there had been an improvement offensively, and they were kind of in games. This weekend, it looked like they'd all gone back on holiday. Union really killing this game with 2 goals in the space of, I think, of about 90 seconds it was, both of which were entirely avoidable as well. Really poor goals to concede. Fran Jovanovic, he's still the man. 13 goals, I think, in 24 across all competitions now, including, I think it's 5 in his last 4, if you include Europe as well. And a Union side now unbeaten in their last 11, domestically at least, in the league. So they really have, they're really starting to gel now and are becoming part of a conversation at the top of the table.
Yeah, the closing in a little bit, still some distance, of course, but with the halving a little less again, like as well, again, to Club Brugge at least, and that's the first team they're chasing, of course, at the moment. If they can keep that gap as it is, I think they will have done a really good job already, but maybe they can even close it down a bit more. But yeah, on a new pitch for Beerschot, of course, on the keel as well. Still not perfect, but that's of course also because there's not enough time to really let the grass sow like it should, like clubs do in the summer. Especially, I mean, here clubs with a bit more money have a bit more of an advantage. Of course, they have a little more groundkeeping. Both people actually, I believe, I'm not sure if there's one at the moment even in Beerschot or the groundkeeper, but also in the techniques of that, of course, technology. But yeah, anyway, it looked better than it was before, at least. That yes, but that was not an achievement maybe. And I guess they had a relatively positive start in this game. Like they had a few chances, one really big one where Kosia had a very bad first touch while he was on his way to Maurice for a one-on-one. But yeah, that was very soon over. With 2 goals in not even 2 minutes. Where there was I forgot who it was or his name on X, but there was a funny tweet. I think we still can call it tweet. Officially not anymore since 2025, I believe, but still losing myself in the details here. But just someone that said like, they Union now scored as many goals in 2 minutes as they had scored in at the time spell in the beginning of the season. I don't know the exact dates anymore, but like middle of August, beginning of August until middle of September, something like that in that area. Remember those times where they were struggling to score, and Ivanovic, I think for part of that streak was not there yet, and after that also just needed a little time to settle. He's really on fire. 4 goals as well as since our last recording. 9 in the league now. Also, Promise David, not that he has scored a difficult one this time, but also at 7 now, starting to become a good decent amount once again. Also combined, looks like they seem to be gelling indeed. And then you already mentioned how many games they're unbeaten, and it's also 3 months. So November, December, and January, they are now unbeaten. They've completely made it through unbeaten. I believe I'm missing now that they probably have a game on Thursday, so this is not completely confirmed yet on the full calendar month yet, but so far, I'm actually sure they have, as you will be at that game, but but okay, regardless of that, it's anyway 3 months if you don't look at calendar months yet. Yeah, Beerschot, they are a bit of a lost cause, or they should really get all points, maximum points in the relegation playoffs, and hopefully pick up a few points before as well. Not very likely, and Union keep on going.
Yeah, so let's speaking of keeping on going, let's do that ourselves. Let's move from the city of Antwerp, which we were very complimentary of a little while ago, which we've been back in, albeit at a different stadium with Beerschot. Move from Antwerp over to Brussels. Anderlecht 4, Mechelen 1. A scoreline that almost certainly flatters Anderlecht, and that's nothing to do with my own red and yellow bias. Bias with a small b. Regular listeners will know of my soft spot for Malinois. But yeah, a scoreline that flatters Anderlecht. I think it doesn't tell the complete story of the game by any stretch of the imagination. Mechelen, really poor defensively, I thought, Joris. Failure to take their chances, some basic game management issues in there as well. They're winless in 8 now. We've been keeping close tab of those numbers. Just some real fundamentals not happening with them there. And I was tearing my hair out, which I don't have. For those of you who know what I actually look like. With them not engaging in duels and basic game management things, as I was getting at, they're leaving too much space. Besnik Hazi was pretty irate post match. He described the performance on the whole as pretty scandalous, and he said we simply can't defend. Although from a positive perspective on Mechelen specifically, the substitutions that Hazi made at halftime did make a difference really to the performance levels in this game. There was more speed and aggression and creativity, all of the things that you would want to see from them when we saw Bill Antonio come on and Keanu Van Raffelen making a difference, actually. Antonio in particular, his pace causing real problems getting into some great positions. And I just wonder, Joris, what your thoughts on, does this tell us that Antonio needs to start and possibly Van Raffelen needs to start a couple of games just to see if they can bring that tempo from the off?
Maybe Antonio, of course. I guess they're still a bit cautious because of coming back from an injury, a severe injury. So the minutes are probably well measured for him. But yeah, he's shown at least that he's really ready for at least longer substitutions, performances, and maybe indeed to get a start as well. Rafael, they probably eyed him to play a little more often anyway as well. So I guess you could make a case for that as you are, as you just did. That I guess for Mechelen, same shit, different week a little bit. Sometimes they have played worse than they played here. I guess last week, for example, the beginning was good, but then they dropped off. Now they were better for more parts of the game, but yeah, in a sense of efficiency, the big nothing almost again, if it wasn't for a Raman rebound as well. So and looking worse and worse as well. Of course, what is it? You mentioned the number already, but 8 games without win, or anyway a big streak. Looking bad. Also, some signs of the squad falling out a little bit with Hazi as well. So that's not encouraging for a manager that hasn't won much lately as well. So yeah, difficult situation there for sure. They played quite well. It's a bit weird to be very positive about the side that lost 4-1. Well, very quite positive, and then at the same time, well, it's logical maybe then, but do not be too impressed by the side that actually won with that same scoreline with 4-1. Anderlecht, definitely 4-1 was a flattering scoreline. Should I even have won the game? Well, I also play some question marks there. Well, if it weren't for our favorite word, I'll practice to not use it. So I won't mention it literally. But
I don't have a bell with me, but I will bring one next week.
But well, there are a few positives for them, of course. Well, this is a positive or not? I guess so. First start for Kiekenborg because much like Van Aken, Kozemans was out. I think he was actually has an injury. First start for Kiekenborg. Who did well? First start in the league. He played a cup game already before, but nothing else. And he did well. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
he helped at least in the ball stopping department. Playing out might be a bit different, but that's has been deteriorating with Kozemans in the last few weeks as well. While that was a strong point earlier in the season, but also first start for the young Japanese striker Goto, and the first goal as well. Nice finish. The Wolf potentially could have done a bit better there still, but he came out of nowhere and it was an unexpected header and really well placed in the end, for sure. Whether he is a solution and the real second striker behind Dolberg, I hear from Anderlecht fans that he's not really shining even at the futures level yet. But so that remains a bit to be seen. And but yeah, it looks like he has, at least for the time being, passed Vasquez in that role. And then the interesting things there still, like in the squad. Yeah, and then Donker, even also again in this game, it was painful to watch at times against these spacey players like Antonio, and other wingers of Michele Belgali as well, for example. So far, you really can only say like a total flop. His return, that it's getting worse and worse. You would expect it to become better with getting more playing time, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Of course, it's not an easy situation for him either to really try to pull this squad out of the mud. But I do feel like he is one of the main reasons that why they are actually still where they are at the moment in the classification and not higher up, because of the type of player he's supposed to be and that he isn't at the moment.
Yeah, I'm glad you were complimentary about Kiekenborg, because I was going to mention him. He impressed me this weekend. I thought he looked good. His communication was great, and I think he's got presence as well. And those two things are immensely important if you're a goalkeeper. So I saw lots of good things from him this weekend, and I noticed actually even at half time when he was coming off, the Anderlecht coaching staff literally put their arms round his shoulders actually, and were whispering what looked like very positive vibes into his ears. They were obviously happy with what they were seeing as well. So he's someone to watch out for. And Koosman needs to be looking over his shoulder, I think, a little bit, because although he's been very good, Kiekenborg, I think, is more than ready to step in and claim that spot if he's given the opportunity to get, a proper run at it. That's one to kind of keep an eye on. Just one final point on Mechelen. They've got Leuven away next. That is almost as big a fixture for them and for Besnik Hazy as Timmy Simons Westerlo have in their game against Kortrijk. If that goes the wrong way for Mechelen, then I think Besnik Hazy is going to be in a very, very difficult situation. And unfortunately, we don't like seeing coaches lose their job here. We know they do all the time in Belgium. It's just the way it is culturally. There's a pretty high probability, I'm just going to put this out there now, there's a high probability that we will be one manager down again by the time we convene to do this again next week, but we'll see which way the chips fall. Moving on to the final game of the weekend, which won't take us too long to cover because it was a 0-0 draw between Leuven and Ghent. A still managerless Ghent. It may be or it may not be Karel Giereerts coming in. It's still looking likely that it could be for all sorts of reasons. We'll see whether that transpires by this time next week. For a 0-0, not a bad game in truth, but again, both sides are struggling for different reasons really at the moment. Are you seeing on Leuven's part, particularly Joris, any more positive signs in the offensive department, because obviously they've brought a new striker in, who there's a pretty big onus on. Seen anything in this weekend that suggests you think, given a bit of time, he could produce the goods?
Well, all I can say for now is like, if like many British clubs in the last few seasons have done, there would be an award of goal of the month for them. Yeah, it would not be awarded because they haven't scored in January. They went the whole month goalless. So yeah, I guess that answers your question so far. Of course, for the new signing, that's unfair a little bit. Give some more time, but yeah, as a squad, that's very worrying. Of course, they kind of improved every little game. Like 3-0 loss in the cup against Club, 2-0 loss against Genk, 1-0 loss last week. And now the 0-0. So maybe next week they win with 1-0 and they complete a very remarkable streak there. And unusual, but also not one you really get away out of danger much. But yeah, also it was their 11th draw. Talking about the first game of this weekend, with a lot of teams that have drawn a lot, in this game even more. So yeah, for Leuven, their 11th, for Gent, their 8th draw in total as well. So yeah, for both sides, yeah, one of the reasons why they are not achieving the goals that they both had. Yeah, even though for Leuven in the end, I guess that's a relatively okay result, since, well, it's a point gained on Westerlo, and they don't, and on Mechelen, and they don't lose. No side in around that part of the classification actually has won, so they don't lose ground to anyone and gain a point to a few. For Gent, of course, it's worse because now they're officially virtually out of the Champions playoffs as well, putting even more pressure. Weird that Van Zijre only got on the 88 minutes because they also clearly have a striking issue, and so yeah, have a striking issue with the strikers, and but that, yeah. I'm not sure if he. I think you suggested like it's weird that he didn't even start. I guess I can follow that, but really only going on that late, that's still strange to me. I would have given him at least half an hour in this game, the way it was going. But the positive, I guess, is for them, they haven't lost since Franke's departure. But yeah, I mean, that was quite a stupid joke, clearly. Yeah, and also it was well, I haven't actually seen much of this game, so I can't comment too much on the level of play. But it was the Stefan Mitrovic derby as well, so that's, yeah. I mean, it's not even funny or something, but like it's worth mentioning, I guess.
Absolutely. I think from a Leuven perspective, Chris Coleman said some funny things this week. I thought they were funny anyway. He was talking about whether there'd be any more movement for them in the window, and he said, I'm kind of reluctant to add any more in an offensive sense because I don't want to disturb the dynamic and the players who are here, which is kind of odd. I mean, we've said all season that, you know, offensively they look like they have better tools at their disposal, which the club don't seem to be getting the best of at the moment. And to not want to add anyone more, fair enough. It's a choice, of course. Although they've done that, of course. They have done that. They've freshened things up a little bit. We'll see if anything comes. I mean, at the moment, they're kind of sitting around, like you say, a place where, you know, they're not entirely comfortable, but there's a little bit of daylight for them. Obviously, the Mechelen game is a big one for quite a few reasons as well. Ghent, on the other hand, quite simply just need to bring the new T1 in. They just need that reboot, don't they, to turn the page and bring everyone back together again. Speaking of bringing people back together, last week we had some fun, or at least I was having some fun with you and Ben, around whether we would see white smoke emanating from the FA in relation to us getting a new T1 with the national team. And lo and behold, we do have white smoke now. We do know it is going to be one of the individuals whose name we threw out there last week. It is Rudy Garcia. 60-year-old French coach, former Saint-Etienne, Dijon, Le Mans, Lille, Roma, Marseille, Lyon, Al Nassr, and Napoli head coaches. He is Vincent Manner's choice, Joris, and we should remind everybody, just in case you didn't listen to last week's episode, I threw all the names out there, and Ben and Joris said yes, no, or maybe. Joris was even more clear with us all, though. Joris said, no, I'm not doing the maybes, it's just a yes or no. I admire that directness. And on Rudy Garcia specifically, do you remember, Joris, you said no pretty quickly. How do you feel about it now?
I've done a little more reading now, and I'm a little more in the I know I'm not doing that, but leaning more towards the yes in this case, and at least a maybe is maybe the right call here. I thought his record was worse than it actually is at the moment, and not only worse, but longer ago. But like he actually still quite recently. Relatively recently made it to the semifinals of the Champions League, for example. So things like that I should have known, but I didn't really look into it last week. And now I know that these things, then that his main features are not 15 years behind him with together with Eden Hazard at Lille, which is still the highlight of his career, I suppose. But like it's not that he hasn't done anything. The main worrying thing for me is still a bit like that he has in his latest clubs fallen out with the superstars, which could, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it could be one of the things that's not necessarily good. But also there, apparently the reasoning is that the disco was a bit too was not enough going against the people inside the FA, and then going a bit too much with it, and they didn't really give any much, not much feedback or go against them at certain points. Didn't have a strong will. It looks like Garcia has that, and if that was what they were looking for, we can only hope that that's indeed. It's not just a PR talk, but really what they wanted, and then something that indeed, I mean, it can bring teams and in general people much forward, of course, to be in such kind of environment. But it's a bit of a risk in that sense. But yeah, I'm a bit more positive than I was last week. Not that I'm completely convinced, but a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting appointment in some respects. I mean, I think what's clear, and what was probably clear even before the appointment was confirmed, actually, was that not really very many people were particularly willing to take the job on, really. That was kind of clear. To be fair to Vincent Manner, actually, the new technical director at the FA, who most, if you know your Belgian football, you know, we don't need to remind you who Vincent Manner is, has been quite kind of diligent in the process. He's been talking to a number of candidates and looking at people in great detail over quite a short space of time, obviously. Unfortunately, that has led to a situation where we talked about this last week, that the departure to Tedesco felt like a slow, lingering inevitability, which it definitely was. So it's just good to have an appointment now. Garcia's underlying base numbers are pretty good across his career. I mean, he's got a win ratio across his entire career of nearly 49%, which is actually good. You know, those baseline numbers are good. And like you say, Champions League semi-final in there, Europa League runner-up as well. He has won, obviously, a French title. He's won the French Cup. So there's some interesting and significant things on his CV. He's also briefly worked as a physio and as a scout, incidentally, as well, which I find quite interesting. We also put out a little poll on our social media when the white smoke was emanating from the FA's building, just to ask you guys, everyone out there, what your thoughts were on the appointment. And of those of you who replied to us, 50% of those who responded to that poll said they were unsure, they were kind of on the fence about it, and only 22% of those who responded said they thought it was a good appointment. So I think most people feel a bit kind of uninspired by it, but ultimately he's going to have to hit the ground running as all new coaches come in, because he needs to bring everybody together again, that's for sure, and get everybody on the same page. and ready for the future. But there's plenty of positive signs in the appointment, I think, to suggest it might be a reasonable appointment, and we wish him well, and we look forward to those first few games. More on that later on when those fixtures arise. We should move on. Or move down, shall we say? We move down to the Challenger Pro League. We've reached Matchday 19 there. What's been happening down there, Joris? Well, Lokeren drew 1 each with Liers. Molenbeek beat Jong Genk 1-0. Sarang and Frank Baran drew 1 each. Young Anderlecht and Patro Eisden also drew 1 each. Zulte Waregem came from 2 goals down, not for the first time this season, to win 3-2 against Eupen. Lommel lost 2-0 at home to RFC Liège, and Club Next managed to win last gasp against RAL. So the big picture, as always, leaves us with Zulte top. They're now 7 points clear, and getting closer and closer to an automatic return to the Pro League in the top table. Molenbeek actually are kind of, I suppose, the big winners of the weekend in a way. They're now up to second, and because RAL lost late on, they've dropped out of the automatic spots. RAL are now down to third, and that ends a really good run actually for them. That was their first defeat in 9. So they'll be disappointed to have lost out at the death in that game. I actually saw the second half of that game, and they just kind of switched off. Actually, it was a loss of concentration from my perspective that led to them losing the 3 points there. Really, Young Genk are still in the drop zone at the moment, but a bit of news coming out of there. As well, Genk have now decided to sack Young Genk's T1, Thomas Buffel, who again needs no introduction. And we now know that he's going to be replaced by Johan van Romst, who is very well known as being Philippe Clement's T2 for a very long time, Joris. He was with Philippe at Beveren and at Genk and at Club Brugge as well. And Philippe was quite keen to take him to Rangers when he went there, but he stayed in France at Monaco. Was actually mentioned internally. I don't know how you feel about this. He was part of discussions as to whether he might become T1 with the senior side at Genk in the summer before Torsten Fink became the preferred candidate. So that's quite an interesting appointment. He was looking to step up and become a T1, and he's now got his chance at Young Genk. And I just wonder whether if he can keep Young Genk up, whether he might find himself with a very interesting offer from a senior side in the Pro League in due course as well. We'll see what happens there. A couple of other bits of news probably worth mentioning are that Lommel have now dropped out of the playoff spots completely. They're winless in 6 now, still coachless since Steve Bold departed, and it's kind of looking like, and I might be being a little bit premature here, but unless something rather spectacular happens there in the last bit of the season, it's looking increasingly like their season is over for another year. The other bit of big news, I suppose, is Ryan Angelan, who was not only scored his first goal on his debut for Lokeren, but within hours of that found himself being interviewed by the police as part of a cocaine trafficking investigation. It's never dull in the Challenger Pro League, is it, Joris?
No, this season it's in the spotlights, and for all the good reasons. Teams going bankrupt, coke dealing. Well, okay, it's not coke dealing. That's the clickbait title for that I'm creating myself. It's more like the money laundering part that seems to have been the case. He has been released earlier today as well, but. That he was detained on its own. He definitely at least gave money willingly or not. Well, I mean, knowingly or not to wrong people. Let's put it that way. It looks like it's a case like that, and I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to give any more comments on that, but never a dull moment for sure. And on the Genk news, young Genk news, Van Rums indeed, like he was an assistant manager at under Clement at Genk already as well, and like that was really the best year of his career. We at least as Genk fans, we know that it's not the first time last summer that his name was circling around for that head coach position. Even while that might be something they maybe didn't dare to do, as there have been some assistant coaches becoming coaches, managers themselves, is not always a success, because it's an entirely different responsibility and position, of course. Maybe it's a good way in. Maybe they're actually eyeing to maybe internally hoping everything goes well, that he can replace Fink even later on whenever he would go. But we'll see. That these things are very difficult to plan. So and I personally feel that the timing of that change is too late as well, and that the season of Young Genk, it would be at the moment as things are going quite a miracle, as they're completely without confidence. And the players they have brought in from abroad don't seem to be clicking at all. And like, you can ask, why would you bring those in and not put your own players there? But okay, I know not everyone is very much interested in these young sides, but I could say a lot of things about it. The things that Young Genk have not been going well this season so far, and Van Rumst is facing a difficult challenge. I'll leave it at that. And yeah, of course, I personally hope he does a good job, of course. But
yeah, we did get another bit of news actually yesterday from the Challenger Pro League, which some people have been talking about, it's a little bit bizarre. We know now that Patro Eisden are also looking to take over, either in part or whole, the temporary stand that never ever got used at Denza. Patro Eisden are looking to take that to their own stadium in order to meet licensing requirements and secure a license for 1A in the eventuality that they get promoted. A lot of people have been finding that kind of a bit bizarre. So we'll see whether that eventually transpires or not. But that's another week in Belgian football. Thank you very much for joining me, Joris.
Always. Whenever I'm free, at least. Luckily, that's lately a bit more than it has been earlier in the season.
Which is most of the time. Yeah, it is indeed. It's always a pleasure to spend time reviewing the week in Belgian football with you. If you like what we do, please do leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. We would really appreciate that. Always helps new people to find us here at the Belgian Football Podcast. And if you really, really like what we do, then you also have the option of buying us a coffee. You'll find the links to that on our social media. That goes a small way to helping us meet some of our ongoing production costs here at the BFP. Another week in Belgian football, and look forward to doing it all again with hopefully the three of us again next week. We'll see what life throws in our way, Joris. We'll see who gets to convene. I'll make sure I bring a bell, and if I don't bring a bell, I'll bring a swear jar, or maybe both.
Looking forward to that.
Whatever you're up to, everyone, look after yourself, and we'll speak to you very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.